Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. How would you describe the tone of the meeting with NASCAR?
I would say the tone of the meeting was firm, but they got their point across, and they did it in a really good way. So I think that was good for everyone in the series to hear. The different sides of it with all three that were in there. A lot of great things were said about what we could do better going forward. I stand strongly on the side of, for whatever reason, when the Xfinity Series go to Martinsville, we just lose our minds. But everywhere else, we're the best racing in NASCAR. And I strongly stand behind that we are the best series in NASCAR. Just when you go to Martinsville, we look like we don't know what we're doing. So we're going to get through it. We have, whatever it is, 7-8 months before we go back to Martinsville. I'm hoping a lot of things, change between now and then. I don't think that just one meeting is going to change the outcome of the playoff race in Martinsville. So, it might be one of those cases where we need to have multiple meetings throughout the year just to reiterate some of the stuff. Even if things aren't happening on the racetrack, even if it's just say we're all racing clean and we're all doing the right things, but I think we got to keep it in everyone's head that, race the way you want to be raced and race with respect. And I thought that that's kind of where we ended the conversation today, and I thought it was all great.
We'll go to Jeff.
As a veteran in the series, what do you see your role in doing this and taking sort of a stance for people that might be in their first year in the series?
Yeah, so Justin Allgaier and I had a really great conversation outside of the tent. Once he got done talking to you guys and all, we were walking back, and I stopped him, and we had a really good conversation. And I think that him and I can both bring some really great things to the table. Justin's very respected on the racetrack, and but he's also super aggressive, but he does it in a sneaky way. It's kind of crazy to watch how he does it sometimes. He's super aggressive, but he does it in a good way, in a sneaky way. I'm on the other end where I'm super aggressive, and you push on me, I push on you, that type of thing, and it just is what it is. I try to handle my business on the racetrack, and after the race is over, I've done so many things wrong in my career up until this point, and I felt like from last year into this year, I've kind of changed my mindset a little bit on just getting out of the car and talking to the media and talking on and just saying random things. Like there's so many things that I would love to go back and take back that I've said throughout my career, but you can't go back and change it, right? You can just move forward. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm kind of taking a different role on things that I say outside of the race car versus things that I do inside the race car. And saying all that, I think that Justin and I can bring a lot to the table on trying to lead the Xfinity Series. I think that him and I both being veterans of the sport, he has different ways of looking at it than what I do, but I think that we both can kind of bring our own perspective in a way and kind of reach both eras of drivers, as far as the super aggressive ones and maybe the ones that race extremely clean, whatever. I think that him and I can give a lot of feedback to the drivers.
Bob Hockers, Fox Sports. Some people were somewhat critical of the way you drove in that race. Last week you said the one thing you felt bad about was wrecking the wreck that got Jesse, but I'm curious, after looking, did you see anything else that you feel like they felt bad about?
No. So I said this in the meeting, actually. In our meeting that we just had, they opened it to the floor. Justin spoke first, and I spoke second on some of the areas that we need to do a better job of, or where we stand or where we feel like we stand. I basically said kind of the same thing I was just saying a second ago, race the way you want to be raced. And I said, look, if you go in there and you are lifting somebody's rear tires off the ground 4 or 5 different times and you're not wrecking them, but you're using them as a brake pedal, and you're knocking them out of the way, out of the groove to get by them, and you're doing it on entry. If you're doing it across the middle of the corner, you're faster than that guy. Like, no one should get mad if that guy kind of gives you a little shot across the middle of the corner. That's Rubbins racing at its finest. That's Martinsville. That's the bump and run type thing. But if you're just going in there and you're using that guy's a brake pedal, and it's 8 tires are better than 4, and you're lifting the rear tires off the ground, and that happens 4, 5, 6 times with the same guy, eventually that guy's going to break, and he's not going to put up with it anymore, you know? I will say this, too. I completely misjudged getting into the back of the 16. You can go back and listen to my interview after Martinsville. I got free, like right when I got into the 16, I got free with the rear tires, and I was starting to like wheel hop. So then I got off the brake pedal for a second, and I got back to it. And I didn't realize that the 16 was already really tight to the 2, and the 2 was really tight to the 1, and it just caused a chain reaction. So, yeah, I felt really bad about the situation and how it went down. Looking back at it, probably would have waited an extra corner and done things a little differently, but I would have at least gave the 16 a little bit of a nudge and shot him up the racetrack into the 2nd or 3rd lane to show, like, hey, man, you've lifted my rear tires off the ground 4 or 5 different times now. I'm not going to put up with it. Somebody else on the racetrack might put up with it, but I'm not. And then other thing, I mean, I didn't really get into – there was no other real contact that really happened between me or anyone else other than the one cut across my nose down the front stretch, and I went as far left as I wanted to, and I finally just straightened up the wheel, and I'm like, I'm not turning left no more, and he kind of drove across my nose. I could have lifted in that instance, but he had already blocked me 3 or 4 different times. So again, if you block me 3 or 4 different times, at some point I'm not just going to keep turning left and letting you keep that spot. So I stand strongly on how the race went. As far as my part in it, I completely misjudged the 16 mishap, and wish I wouldn't have taken the 2 and the 1 out. But that was, I mean, honestly, that was just a racing error on my part.
Here's Mike at Trends.com. Austin, if last week was over the line, then how is it going to be judged when we go to Martinsville in October, knowing likely that one spot will likely get you into the championship 4?
Well, NASCAR made it very, very clear that they don't want to be in the, ball and strike business. They don't want to be making all these calls. So they said for us to help them with that. They also said that if they had to step in and start making calls and black flagging people and parking people and doing all those things, that they'll do it. So I agree with what NASCAR's stance is at, but I also think that we as the Xfinity Series have to do a better job going forward when we go back to Martinsville and not put it in NASCAR's hands. We don't want NASCAR to get involved and to have to make these ball and strike calls. Like we don't want that as drivers. We want to be able to race and beat and bang and do all these things, but do it in a respectful way. So there's a lot of things that we all got to look in the mirror, even myself included. We all as drivers have to look in the mirror and figure out what we can do to move forward and not have NASCAR get involved.